You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I am your host, Steph, and today I'm going to be previewing the 49ers offense and how they match up against the Seahawks defense. And it is not week 2. We are in week, 15 now or something like that? Yeah, it's crazy. And so the 49ers have a chance to clinch the NFC West with a win tomorrow night, Thursday night football under the bright lights in Seattle. What would be better than to clinch the NFC West once again in front of that crowd? It would be great, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm going to talk about everything leading up to that matchup for the offense, what it means, and all of that. So first, let's look at the injuries because on the 49ers side, there are quite a few to track this week. So let's look at that. So Deebo Samuel, obviously with his MCL and ankle injury, is going to be out. Also, obviously, Kevin Givens, he has an MCL sprain, also going to be out. Samuel Womack has a concussion. He is out. Jimmy Garoppolo, Hassan Ridgeway, and Tarvarius Moore, who the team has elected to not place on IR, but is set to miss multiple weeks. Those guys are also out. And then questionable is Brock Purdy dealing with an oblique and rib injury, Kerry Hyder with an ankle, and Ambry Thomas as well with an ankle injury. Now, Brock Purdy, I would imagine he ends up playing tomorrow. And just based on what Kyle Shanahan said about his injury yesterday on Tuesday, he said that it's more of a pain tolerance issue and not something that would get worse if Brock were to play. So I feel like that's a green light that he should play. And really this whole dance that Kyle Shanahan has been doing of, well, he might or might not play, that's more so to just get the Seahawks to prepare for more than one quarterback and try to get an advantage there. But I would definitely expect Brock Purdy to play in this game. Now, on the Seahawks side, they don't have anyone declared out, and really it's just questionable players. Running back DJ Dallas, safety Ryan Neal, as well as safety Joey Blunt. Their nose tackle Al Woods, their cornerback Trey Brown are all questionable. So I'm sure most of those guys will be able to play. But look, let's look at the Seahawks defense this season. How have they been looking? How have they been doing? What are they good at? What are they bad at? Let's talk about it. So they are 9th in interceptions per game, which is pretty high. So they do get some turnovers, and mostly because they have a great corner in Tariq Woolen, and I'll talk more about him in a bit. But just something of note, like they do get interceptions, and they're also 10th in sack percentage. So they do get after the quarterback as well. They're 18th in yards allowed per completion. Now we're getting at the good stuff for the 49ers offense. 18th in yards allowed per completion at 10.4. So they're allowing an average of 10.4 yards every time a pass is completed against their defense. They're also 18th in passing yards allowed per game. They're 28th in first downs allowed per game, 28th in third down conversion percentage allowed, 28th in average rushing yards per carry, 4.9, 28th in total yards allowed per game, 29th in touchdowns allowed per game, 30th in points allowed per game. They are allowing an average of 25.7 points per game this season. They're 31st in rushing yards allowed per game. They're allowing an average of 160.5 rushing yards allowed per game, and they are dead last in opponent average time of possession. If you watched my preview episode yesterday, my 49ers defense preview episode, I went through some of the stats for the Seahawks offense, and they are also dead last in average time of possession. And so this one's not surprising. So they're pretty bad in that area. And as you can see, yes, they do get interceptions. They get sacks. But after that, like, it's pretty much fair game with this Seattle defense. There is a lot a lot lacking here, and especially when you look at what they're allowing from a rush defense perspective, you really feel good about this matchup for the 49ers because they have some great running backs. But let's talk about the battle of the trenches. All right, so sorry if this is kind of tiny. I'll make it a little bit bigger for the YouTube viewers here. And basically, Nwosu has been their most consistent defensive lineman. He's tied for 13th in sacks on the season with 9 total. And he draws Mike McGlinchey this week. And I expect this to be a challenge for McGlinchey, but McGlinchey hasn't allowed a sack in 5 straight games. So maybe McGlinchey's turning a new leaf. I don't know. I hope I didn't just jinx him, but he's done pretty well these last 5 games, and so let's see if he can do it again. But let's see what the Seahawks defense did the last time these two teams played back in week 2. Well, Poona Ford had 1 pressure, 1 hurry. Al Woods has had 1 pressure, 1 hurry. He also had a batted pass. Uchenna Nwosu had 5 pressures, 3 quarterback hits, 2 hurries, and a batted pass. So you can see why, like, Nwosu is definitely the guy to worry about on this Seahawks defensive line. He's very productive, more so than most people. And just of note, Bruce Irvin did not play in week 2. Neither did Shelby Harris. Well, I think Shelby Harris went out with an injury in that game because he only had 3 snaps. So didn't count any of those guys in this list, obviously, but Nwosu, he's the guy to worry about on this line. And just one thing I wanted to point out is that, Brock Purdy, I think the difference between him and Jimmy Garoppolo, I think Purdy has been able to help the offensive line to an extent because he's got great pocket awareness. He knows when to escape the pocket, and he can extend plays out of the pocket, which makes it difficult for opposing defenses to, get sacks on him. So I think, him being there has helped the offensive line not allow as many sacks because he's helping them out. So I think that's a positive going forward. And just of note, the 49ers QB sacked percentage is lower in their last 3 games with Brock Purdy at quarterback than their season average. Their last 3 games, Brock Purdy has gotten sacked 4.7%. Their season average, you got to think most of that was with Jimmy Garoppolo. Their season average was 5.3%. So just to show you what difference, Brock Purdy has been able to make in that department. Now let's talk about how the Seahawks defense defends against tight ends. So on average per game, they allow 7 targets, 4.4 receptions, and 61.4 yards per game to tight ends. And they've allowed 6 touchdowns to tight ends this season. So they're not exactly the worst. They're not exactly the best. They're just cruising by in tight end defense. But George Kittle, he didn't play in week 2, so we don't have much of a frame of reference for this season and how he would do against the Seahawks. But last week, Kittle was targeted 5 times. He caught 4 passes and had 38 yards. I am still waiting for a big role for George Kittle. Like, it's a little, at this point, I think we'd be waiting forever to see a big game from George Kittle. Really, the last big game was against Arizona in Mexico City when he had the 2 touchdowns. I would like to see another performance like that, but I'm really not sure because even with Brock Purdy at quarterback, the targets haven't really increased substantially for George Kittle. So not sure what to expect really for Sunday with Kittle. Now, let's talk about the 49ers wide receivers. But first, let's talk about how the Seahawks defend against wide receivers. They do allow an average of 17.8 targets, 11.5 receptions, and 130 yards to opposing teams' wide receiver unit per game. So that's the entire unit, okay? They've allowed 10 touchdowns to wide receivers this season. What does that mean for the 49ers receivers? Well, unfortunately, Deebo Samuel is not going to be available for this game, and he's going to be missing a few weeks. So let's talk about that for a second because that can change how the 49ers look and how they attack the Seahawks in this one. So the last time that Deebo Samuel missed a game was in week 8 against the Rams, another divisional opponent. In that game, Brandon Ayuk had 6 targets, 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. So he had a pretty good role. And I would say lately he's had a pretty good role on this team anyway. So, maybe he sees another solid game. Ray McCloud in week 8 without Deebo had 2 targets, 1 catch, and 11 yards. So surprisingly, even with McCloud taking most of those outside snaps for, in Deebo's place, he didn't do much with them. And of course, that's with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. So not sure if with Brock Purdy it would be any different, but just saying maybe not expecting too much out of McCloud. And then finally, it seemed that Christian McCaffrey got the biggest boost out of having Deebo Samuel out of the game, because against the Rams in week 8, he had 9 targets, 8 catches, 55 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. He also had 18 carries for 94 yards and a 5.2 yards per attempt rushing average. So McCaffrey did a pretty good job, filling in for that Deebo role. He's able to catch the ball and run it as well. So he's kind of a wide back in his own right. And so also that was the first full game of Christian McCaffrey, not being on hold on. I got like a new I got a new standing desk, right? And there's a lock on this desk so that I don't accidentally press the buttons, but I didn't lock it. So sometimes I just accidentally press the buttons and it starts moving. Sorry. That was funny. But Christian McCaffrey, that was his first game in week 8 where he really got the bulk of opportunities because he knew most of the playbook at that point. So I think it was a little bit of Kyle Shanahan just being really excited to use him, especially against the Rams, and also Deebo Samuel being out. So maybe we see a similar usage this week, and I'll talk more about the running backs in a bit because that could also factor in, maybe we see a little bit more of Jordan Mason as well. Who knows? Last week, after Deebo Samuel went out with his injury, McCloud got a couple of carries, and that was interesting because that's not something he had done before in the past, but he got 2 carries. He wasn't very effective with it, but hey, I don't know. Maybe the 49ers try to see what they can do with that, in this game against the Seahawks. But let's move on and talk about the Seahawks. Talk about the Seahawks corners. So as I mentioned, Tariq Woolen, he's awesome. He's a really talented corner. He's tied for first in interceptions. He has 6 interceptions this season. He's also tied for third in passes defended with 13. So he's a very disruptive player, and he can be very dangerous. He's going to try to get those interceptions. To be tied for first, by the way, he's a rookie. So to be tied for first as a rookie, he's been making a huge impact for the Seattle defense. So something that Brock Purdy should be aware of and should be, careful of getting baited into throwing an interception to Woolen because he's definitely going to be looking for it, especially in this game. That there's a lot of high stakes in this game for both teams. So definitely something to be aware of. Then they have Kobe Bryant. That's Kobe with the Coby, not with a Kobe, but still a cool name nonetheless. He is tied for first in forced fumbles with 4 on the season. He is the Seahawks nickel corner. So you'll see him on the dime packages and things like that. And then their other outside corner is called Michael Jackson. Yeah, the definitely interesting set of names for this corner group in Seattle. And I just remember watching the game in week 2 and the announcers saying something about Kobe Bryant and Michael Jackson, and everyone's like, what? Where are we? Yeah, that was funny. But Michael Jackson to me is the weaker link out of these Seahawks corners. He did score in week 2 on a blocked field goal touchdown return. And that was the Seahawks' only score of that game in week 2. So, but I definitely think that if the 49ers are going to attack anyone in this corner group, it should be Michael Jackson. I think Kobe Bryant as well could, give up some receptions, but I'd be a little wary of throwing to Tariq Woolen. But from what I've seen from Brock Purdy, he's not afraid of anything, and I think he's going to target him anyway. And from what I've seen from Brandon Ayuk, I think also he has opportunity to get open against anyone at least once or twice a game where he's really open that you have to pass it to him. So, maybe we see a couple plays against Woolen as well that are positive for the 49ers. But let's see. Juwan Jennings as well is another player, of course, who can get extra opportunities with Debo out. I forgot to mention him, but he could have a large role. Well, not a large role. I feel like his role is the same, even with Debo out, at least in the past. In week 8 with Debo, he just saw 2 targets. So, sorry, no, that was McLeod. My bad. But Juwan Jennings, his role remains unchanged. And really, he's the third down guy. So, that will remain the same. The one question I had was, do we see the Danny Gray package this week? Because there was a stat I saw. Hold on, I'll pull it up. It's this one. So deep touchdown passes thrown outside the numbers this season. Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 in the last 3 years. Brock Purdy had 2 in the second quarter on Sunday's game against the Bucks. So Brock Purdy is not afraid to throw the ball deep, and he's not bad at it either. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, they tried the Danny Gray, go route a couple times, just go deep and let's see if the quarterback can hit it. It's just not Jimmy Garoppolo's game like that. He's just not an accurate downfield thrower. And Brock Purdy, I think, has shown a bigger willingness to, take those chances. And hey, if I'm Kyle, I would try it. I'm just saying, let's just try it once. I just want to see it, okay? I would like to see it because there's no other way that Danny Gray is really going to get on the field unless he, gets one of these go routes or just like be out there to stretch the field and open things up underneath. But I don't know. I feel like it's a good opportunity to just see if Brock Purdy could do it. But anyway, that's just me. But let's talk about the 49ers running backs really quick. And because this is exciting to me. It's very exciting because we have 2 really good running backs in McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. We've been trying to tell you that Jordan Mason is the real deal. Ever since training camp, he was one of the better running backs on this team. So it's no surprise to a lot of us what he's doing out there right now. Last week against the Bucks, McCaffrey had a really great game. He had 14 carries, 119 yards. That was good for an average of 8.5 yards per carry. He also had a rushing touchdown. He also had 2 targets, which is kind of low for his standards. 2 catches, 34 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Jordan Mason had 11 carries, 56 yards, and that's good for a 5.1 average yard per carry. And he got more opportunities because the game was pretty much sealed up, by the half. So he got a lot of opportunities in the second half. And I want to point out too that he's just getting more opportunities in general, I think, since he had a bigger role started in week 11. And so for the viewers watching on YouTube here, you'll see that from week 11 on, his carries have been expanding, or his carry count has been growing each and every week. In week 11, he only had 4 attempts. In week 12, he had 5. In week 13, he had 8. Last week, he had 11. So what are we going to see this week? I don't know, but I'm excited to see him have a larger role because I think, with this type of team against like the Seattle defense, who has been struggling against running backs, and this being a short week, this is the perfect game, I think, to unleash Jordan Mason a little bit and see if the Seahawks can stop it. And also because he reminds me a little bit of Marshawn Lynch in the sense that he's just not going down. He's going to keep his feet moving. So what better way to really have a coming out Jordan Mason party than in Seattle? And I just think this is a great opportunity to get him going. Seahawks linebacker Jordan Brooks, he leads the league in tackles, so I think he's going to be a busy man come tomorrow, but it still doesn't change the fact that this is one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. I'll talk about that more in a few minutes here. But look, this tweet by Akash, he said, yards per carry since week 12. 1 is Miles Sanders, 6.5. 2 is A.J. Dillon, 6.0. 3 is Jordan Mason, 5.5 yards per carry average since week 12. 4th is Josh Jacobs at 5.5. And 5th is Christian McCaffrey at 5.2 yards per carry average since week 12. So the 49ers have 2 of the 5 most efficient rushers over the last 3 weeks. And man, I'm just excited for this game because it just feels like, with the Seahawks being so bad at defending the run, this feels like a big bully ball game for the 49ers. And that's exactly, especially with the team being so tired because they just played on Sunday, like it's a perfect time to just run the football and see what you can do with it. And I think we see a lot of that tomorrow night. This tweet by KP, he says 5 of Christian McCaffrey's touches went for double digits against the Bucs. Since week 10, 41% of Christian McCaffrey's carries have gone for at least 15 yards. 41% of his carries. That is crazy. And during that same stretch, CMC has the most receiving yards among all running backs and is the only back with multiple receptions over 20 air yards. That's insane. I think, Christian McCaffrey has just completely transformed this offense since he arrived. This trade was a home run. I think Christian McCaffrey is really what catapulted the 49ers offense into what it is right now. And it's just giving everyone else opportunities to shine as well because, he gets a lot of focus too, but he's also getting a lot of production even with all the focus that he gets. Sean Sullivan in the comments here says, I thought Panthers were run heavy against Seahawks last week. Yes, indeed they were, and it worked out pretty freaking well for them. Paul says, might finally get a win in Seattle. The 49ers have gotten a win in Seattle before. But yeah, I mean, anytime it's definitely not enough, right? We haven't won there enough times for it to feel good going in there. But I don't know. I feel good about this one. I feel pretty good about it. Look, here's what I'm talking about the Seahawks defense and how they defend against the run. Basically, they don't. They allow an average of 39 carries to opposing teams' running back unit per game. 39 carries a game. 118 yards and a 4.6 average yard per carry. That is insane. And they've allowed 13 touchdowns to running backs this season. That is also insane. So again, this is a great opportunity for the 49ers to establish the run. Don't try to do too much. Let's just run the clock and get the hell out. Let's clinch the NFC West. Let's get out of there healthy and let's win this football game. I'm pumped. Steph says, name twin right here. Steph in the comments says Niners are taking it. Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. More so on the offensive side. I think they're going to have a really good game. Not that the defense will have a good game. I think they will too. But definitely I think this game could be decided by the offense, which is a little different than what we're used to. At least I hope that's the case. So let's see. Let's talk about Brock Purdy now. So this tweet by KP, Brock Purdy was 7 for 8 under pressure for 109 yards, averaging 13.6 yards per attempt. That is absolutely wild to be doing that under pressure. And he also had 2 touchdowns under pressure. That's the second highest yards per attempt when under pressure among all quarterbacks in week 14. And 6 of those 7 throws went for either a first down or a touchdown. Just absolutely insane what Brock Purdy is doing. And he's been blitzed a hell of a lot these last 2 weeks between the Dolphins and now the Bucs. The Seahawks don't blitz a lot though. So it's going to be a different challenge for Brock Purdy. He's going to have to beat coverage. Can he do it? I think he can. Rich Madrid actually tweeted about that on his Twitter. Was it earlier today or yesterday? Saying that, yeah, Brock Purdy has beaten coverage before. He can do it again. So I feel good about him being up to the challenge. And here, this tweet by Jordan Splash Cousin. Brock Purdy's numbers on throws 10 plus yards downfield in the 49ers win over Tampa Bay. He was 5 for 5, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 23.4 yards per attempt. A perfect passer rating of 158.3. Man, I mean, I'm just so impressed by what Purdy has been able to do. And finally, this graphic here that I showed a little bit ago. So on the deep touchdown passes thrown outside the numbers, Brock Purdy had 2 of those in the second quarter on Sunday. Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 in the last 3 years. And I mean, Purdy is just the guy who he's down to take chances. He's down to do it. He's not afraid. And I think that's something that this 49ers offense they haven't had in a long time. So I think it's a welcomed change for this team, and it should make every opposing defense a little afraid of what, this kid can do. I'm definitely excited to see what he might do in tomorrow's game. Look, here are the keys of the game for the 49ers offense. And if you watched my defense preview episode, you'll notice that a couple of these are the same. For the offense. Okay. So one is extend drives. The Seahawks are 28th in first downs allowed per game, and they're 28th in third down conversion percentage by their opponents. So they're not good at getting off the field, basically. So the 49ers have to take advantage of that. They have to be able to extend drives. I think they should be able to in this game. And that will allow them to win the time of possession. So this was one of them that I mentioned for the defense as well. Like on the defense side, the defense has to get off the field, and that will help them win the time of possession. The offense, they have to be able to extend drives. So 1 and 2 are kind of connected there. In week 2, the 49ers held the ball 38 minutes compared to the Seahawks 21. So they were able to win the time of possession in week 2. That should be another winning formula in week 15, right? We're in week 15? I think we're in week 15. Yeah. And then lastly, they have to play a mistake-free game. And so this was one I had for the defense as well. The Seahawks committed 10 penalties for 106 yards in week 2. And I think this is another opportunity for the 49ers to play a mistake-free game, because playing in Seattle, hostile environment, the crowd, it goes crazy. You can barely hear yourself think. It's very easy for those penalties to kind of start accumulating a little bit and get in your head. So the 49ers have to make sure they just play their game. And I don't know, maybe do a silent count. I don't know what they got to do, but just make sure they don't let that get to them. But I'm encouraged by, Brock Purdy mentioned that, he wasn't too worried about this game playing in Seattle because of how he played against Oklahoma in November of 2021 against Oklahoma, who I guess they're known for having a really large crowd, 90,000 people yelling. You can't hear yourself think is what he said. He was 30 of 41, 281 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. In November of 2019 against Oklahoma, Purdy was 19 of 30, 282 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 55 yards rushing. And he also had a rushing touchdown. So I'd say that's pretty good. And I'd feel encouraged by that. The fact that, okay, yeah, he's played in very loud environments before and he's still very productive. So, and that's just what I've seen from him this entire time. Like nothing seems to phase him or scare him. Like so I'm not too worried about him playing in Seattle. I don't think it's going to I hope it's not going to make that big of an impact, but it's very important to get into rhythm early, and that should, you know, go throughout the game. So I think establishing the run as well is going to be a huge part of that. So should have also mentioned that they should establish the run. That's a big key for the offense, and I think they'll have a lot of success with that. Paul says, December 29th, 2019 was the last 49er win in Seattle. Yeah, I don't know why that feels like it wasn't that long ago. Maybe because I've held on so tightly to that win. Like we've won in Seattle. Yeah, so yeah, it doesn't feel that long ago, but I guess it was. So it would be nice to get this win, especially knowing that it can clinch the division. The 49ers could definitely use that boost. It'll be definitely nice. Sean Sullivan says Brock seems to have a dope strategy of drawing D-line into hit him to free the runners. I don't know if that's a strategy, but if it is, I mean, I guess it's working. But also, I think some of that was because he was getting blitzed so much in against the Bucs and against the Dolphins that it kind of just happened by naturally, and he's able to locate the open man. So he's good at keeping his eyes upfield, even in the face of pressure. So I'm excited for this game. I think Purdy's going to do okay. This is another big test for him. I mean, he going in the first game against the Dolphins, it was like, okay, you're getting thrown into the fire. Let's see if you sink or swim. He swam. In week 2, it was like, okay, teams have some tape on you now. Let's see how you do. This is a tougher defense going up against the Bucs. What did he do? I mean, he flourished. He looked even better against the Bucs than he did against the Dolphins. And then finally, this game coming up tomorrow, primetime game under the bright lights. It's high stakes game against a division rival. To clinch the division. There's a lot riding on this. So, it's another like gut check kind of game for him. But so far, he's passed all of the freaking tests that have been thrown at him. So I think he's going to do okay, but we'll just have to wait and see how he responds in this game. But I'm excited. I'm excited for this game. It's been a while that I've been excited for a 49ers Seahawks game, but this is definitely up there. All right, guys, that's all I have for my offense preview. If you guys missed my 49ers defense preview, for this game, make sure you check that out. I posted it yesterday on my channel. So go ahead and check that out. It's also up on all streaming platforms. Appreciate all the love. I'll see you guys tomorrow night after the game for my instant reaction. And hopefully talking about a win, right? All right. Have a good night, everyone. Oh, make sure you like and subscribe this video if you have not yet. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night. Peace.